Hi everyone, my name is Stefan Ongo. I'm a professor of business analytics at the University of Southampton. In this video, I'm going to explain about how can operational research methods help us make better food supply chain decisions. This video is made for the CREST OR project funded by the EPSRC. So, what is food supply chain? When we talk about food supply chains, what comes to mind, some what when we talk about food supply chains, what comes to mind is typically a farm. And it's true that a farm is one of the main actors in a food supply chain. Farms, to operate, they need supply from the input industries. They provide supplies such as machineries, fertilizers, seeds, and so on and so forth. The produce from farms, some of them will be sent to processors. So they will add some value added to products through washing, for example, packagings, and in some cases, they change the food products to another form. For example, they can make juice from oranges. Now, the products will eventually be sent to retailers or final consumers. In order to distribute products from one place to another, we will need transportation. Now, let's talk about what is operational research, or OR in short. According to the Operational Research Society, operational research is a scientific approach to the solution of problems in the management of complex systems that enables decision makers to make better decisions. So there are three main keywords here. One is the objective of operational research is to help us make better decisions. Decisions can be very challenging when we deal with complex systems, such as food supply chain. To solve this, we use a scientific approach. It can be in the form of mathematical model, computational model, or software approaches like problem structuring method to help us structure messy problems. So then it can be solved analytically. As I mentioned earlier, the objective of operational research is to help us make better decisions. Now let us look at some examples of decisions that have to be made in food supply chain. Let us look at farms. Farmers need to make decisions about what to produce. For example, the crop mix. Do I need to produce salad leaves only? Or do I need to split my farms into several sections and plant different types of crops? When to plant? Farmers have to make planting schedules. How much resources do I need? This can be in the form of water, labor, finance, and other resources. And of course, these decisions have to be made subject to operational, strategic, regulatory, and ethical constraints. The objectives are multidimensional and they are often conflicting. For example, profit, environmental impact, and social impact. If you look at the input industries, they have to make some decisions too. That can be what product to supply, when to produce, because in order to produce seeds, for example, we need time. How much resources do I need? And again, they operate under some operational, strategic, regulatory, and ethical constraints. And again, they also have multiple objectives that are conflicting, such as profit, environmental impact, and social impact. Now, if you look at the processors, it's the same. They also have to make some decisions. And it can be in the form of what to produce, what kind of value added I need to put in. So for example, for the same oranges, I can make several types of orange juice. Which market to target, when and how to order, do I need to design contracts with the farmers, and what kind of contracts that are suitable? How much resources do I need? Labor, finance, machines, and many more. And they also have to operate under certain operational, strategic, regulatory, and ethical constraints. Again, they also have multiple objectives. If you look at the retailers now, or consumers, they also have to make a lot of decisions. For retailers, what to sell, and what is the pricing strategy? How many to stocks? How much resources do they need? Staffing, finance, and others. And again, they also have to operate within certain constraints. It can be operational, can be strategic, regulatory, or ethical. And they have multiple conflicting objectives too. Now, from the consumer sides, we have to make decisions too. What, where, and how many to buy. We also need resources in order to do that. We need money. And we also have limited time. And we also have some personal constraints because we don't just buy food, we also need something else. And we have also some strategic objective in mind. For example, I probably want to buy a new house in the next 5 years. We often consider ethical constraint too. For example, if we want to support trade fair. And as a human, our decisions sometimes are influenced by others. Just like organizations, we too have multiple conflicting personal objectives. Now, if we look at the transportations, they too have to make decisions. For example, they have to decide what routes, how much resources, drivers, vehicles, fuel, finance, and others. They also have to operate under certain constraints, and they have multiple objectives too. Like many things in life, food supply chain can be disrupted too. When a disaster happens, there are two things that come to mind. First, how can we design our supply chain to be more resilient? This can be achieved by putting some items in the inventory. Hence, the decision is how many to stock. We can also design our food supply chain network or structure to be more resilient. For example, by adding some redundancies. We can also design an appropriate procurement policy with our supplier. And from the consumer, how can we diversify our consumptions so then we don't have to rely on limited choices of food? And it is also important to consider those who are most vulnerable in the society. How to feed them if they cannot afford to buy food? The second thing that comes to mind is disaster management. So when there's a disaster, then how can we supply food for the victims? And in this context, how many relief food we need to stock? And we need to think about the appropriate supply chain structure. Likewise, we also need to design the right procurement policy. Our team at the University of Southampton is working on a project called Relief Ops. More detail about this project can be found from this link. In this project, we are addressing the issue about designing a resilient food supply chain for natural disasters. So, in summary, I have already explained what operational research is. It is a scientific approach to the solution of problems in the management of complex systems that enables decision makers to make better decisions. I have shown you that food supply chain is a complex system. It has many actors and each actor can make independent decisions. And the decisions need to satisfy operational, strategic, regulatory, and ethical constraints. The actors have multiple objectives, and quite often the objectives are conflicting within the actors themselves or between actors because my objective may be in conflict with the other actor objective. Hence, making food supply chain decisions is challenging. This is where operational research can help us make better food supply chain decisions. Thank you for listening.